These are arguably four of the best ultra camera smartphones of 2025, so today we'll be comparing the Huawei Pura 80 Ultra, Vivo X200 Ultra, OPPO Find X8 Ultra, and Xiaomi 15 Ultra in this extremely detailed smartphone camera comparison where we'll be testing out day and night photos and videos. The Huawei Pura 80 Ultra is kitted with a 13 megapixel selfie camera, a 40 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and two 50 megapixel sensors for the main and periscope, but its periscope can shift between lenses for two different optical focal lengths. Its main camera is the only one in this test with variable aperture, but we'll be sticking to auto aperture and the X-Mage original color profile throughout the test. The Vivo X200 Ultra packs in triple 50 megapixel cameras for its selfie, ultra-wide and main, and a 200 megapixel floating periscope sensor with the optional telephoto converter lens, but I'll only be showing a couple samples using the external lens as I feel that a phone shouldn't need any extras to be good. It's the only one here that doesn't have a 1-inch main camera, but it sits at a further native 35mm focal length with gimbal stabilization. It's also the only one with OIS for all of its back cameras. We'll be using the Zeiss natural color profile during the test. The OPPO Find X8 Ultra has a 32 megapixel selfie camera, as well as a quad 50 megapixel rear camera system for its ultra-wide, main, and both periscopes. It's the only one here with a dual periscope setup. And lastly, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra also makes use of a 32 megapixel selfie camera and has 4 rear cameras just like the OPPO. There's triple 50 megapixel sensors for the ultra-wide, main, and telephoto, but its periscope is a 200 megapixel sensor. It's the same one used in the Vivo, but it has a narrower aperture and further optical zoom. We'll be sticking to Leica authentic color modes the entire time. Will Huawei's innovation reign supreme? Will Vivo's advanced ISP set the scene? Will OPPO's dual periscope structure end the game? Or will Xiaomi's best ever Ultra put the rest to shame? This is TechNick, and without further ado, let's find out. What's up guys, this is TechNick recording a 4K 60fps selfie video on what's probably the 4 best camera smartphones of 2025 so far. Let me know your thoughts on their microphone quality as well as their selfie video performance. The Xiaomi has the most stable selfie video and the Vivo's is the worst, but the Vivo packs in the most detail and the most natural tonal range. The Huawei lacks selfie portrait video, but the rest all cap out at 1080p resolution when portrait video is enabled. The Vivo pulls ahead in terms of edge detection and detail. The Huawei has the widest field of view when taking an ultra-wide selfie, and it actually looks the most balanced. The Vivo doesn't have an ultra-wide option, the OPPO is more exposed than the Xiaomi, but the Xiaomi packs in a lot more detail. At times, the Huawei and OPPO fall behind in terms of detail, and while the Xiaomi has the most detail here, it's still too vibrant, leaving the Vivo as the best pick. But the Xiaomi's gotta be my favorite when enabling portrait mode. It nails edge detection and detail. The Huawei looks like a bit of a cut and paste here. Moving on to their main sensors, you'll first need to remember that the Vivo's main camera has a native focal length of 35mm, which is around 1.5 times when compared to the rest. This actually makes sense for portrait photography, making its entire camera system more flexible. That said, I lean more toward the Huawei here due to its more natural balance and perfect tonal range. And it seems like many of you agree, as most of you voted for it in my recent poll on my YouTube page and Instagram. The Vivo was voted for the most on X, aka Twitter, but portrait mode isn't really needed when they all use 1-inch main cameras, except for the Vivo. But due to the Vivo's further focal length, it actually offers a better shallow depth of field. But again, the Huawei is just more balanced, and the Vivo is too oversaturated. The OPPO comes close to the Huawei, and the Xiaomi is a bit too undersaturated and underexposed. Things start to get very interesting when switching over to their telephoto cameras, and off the bat, it's obvious that the Huawei and Vivo stand out the most, with the Vivo taking the lead in terms of sheer detail. The OPPO trails the pack here, but this is just the first telephoto sensor from the OPPO and Xiaomi. The OPPO can reach 6 times optical zoom, whereas the Xiaomi sits at 4.3 times. The OPPO is more exposed, but the Xiaomi is clearly ahead. But even then, the Vivo still comes out on top, even though the Vivo and Xiaomi share the exact same periscope sensor here. But when using their telephotos in super macro mode for a 10cm minimum focus, the Xiaomi seriously impresses, with the Huawei not too far off. This pic was taken of a wind spinner which was moving seriously fast when I took this photo, to test out their shutter speeds of course.
They all have fast shutter modes and all of them manage to keep everything in focus, but in terms of detail and color, I'd have to go with the Xiaomi. Taking a photo with their ultra-wides at their maximum megapixel count has me initially favoring the Huawei due to its tonal balance and foreground detail. It also has the widest field of view, but if you look closer, you'll notice that the Huawei and OPPO overexpose their whites, and the Vivo pulls ahead in terms of dynamic range. This is evident when cropping them in by 400%. When I say crop, I mean I physically cropped into the same photo using software for a better assessment of detail. This is not me zooming in with the phones, and based on this crop, it's clear that the Vivo is a huge step ahead in terms of detail and dynamic range when it comes to its ultra-wide sensor. When taking the same photo but using their main cameras, the OPPO once again blows out whites, but the Huawei corrects this due to its impressive 16 eV dynamic range. The Huawei is my pick here due to its incredible detail from top to bottom, along with its superb dynamic range, but the Vivo is a close second and actually nails color accuracy better. Don't forget, the Vivo has a higher 35mm focal length main camera, so when cropping in by 400%, try not focus on the zoom level of the Vivo, but rather the sharpness and exposure. The Vivo oversharpens things quite a bit with its main camera and tends to blow out its whites, though not as much as the OPPO does. The Xiaomi is quite impressive, but the Huawei still offers the best balance due to that higher level of dynamic range, though its color science could be a bit better. Their main cameras can also take 2x lossless zoom photos, and I once again favor the warmth of the Huawei, along with its exposure and dynamic range. And then we get to their telephoto cameras, setting them all to their native megapixel counts. Remember, the OPPO and Xiaomi have 2 zoom cameras, but only the OPPO has 2 periscopes. At 3 times, the OPPO is streaks ahead of the Xiaomi in terms of HDR and detail, but there's a strange tint going on with the OPPO. At 3.7 times, the Huawei is significantly more balanced than the Vivo, and when cropping them all in, it's easy to tell them apart, with the Huawei taking home a huge win. The Vivo might have a 200 megapixel periscope with a wider aperture, but the Huawei has a larger sensor. Its periscope is actually the same size as Vivo's main camera. Larger sensors always trump higher megapixels. The OPPO's second zoom camera kicks in at 6 times and the Xiaomi's at 4.3 times. And dare I say it, the Xiaomi's 200 megapixel native pic looks better than the Vivo did in the previous photo, even though they use the same sensor. That said, the OPPO offers better balance and dynamic range here. I used the Vivo's telephoto extended lens to take this 8.7 times optical zoom shot, and it's seriously impressive. But what's more impressive is that the Huawei doesn't need an external lens. It simply shifts its periscope over to a different lens inside of its body for a 9.4 times optical zoom shot, and it offers even better detail and dynamic range than the Vivo. The only negative thing about the Huawei here is its excessive vibrance of the Lifebuoy. Unfortunately, the Huawei and Vivo can't shoot native megapixel shots at their higher optical zooms, so their resolutions are lower, meaning that when cropped in by 400%, their detail is a bit lacking, leaving the Xiaomi with the most amount of detail here, but that's only due to over-sharpening. The OPPO actually gets my vote here due to its natural detail. I decided to only use the Vivo's extended lens for the 8.7 times zoom shot because you honestly shouldn't need an add-on lens to have a great camera phone. That said, they all offer 10 times lossless zoom using their periscopes. The Xiaomi is too oversaturated, the Vivo is too undersaturated, the Huawei's colors are a bit of a mixed bag, and the OPPO is on point. The only reason I'm giving Vivo the win here is because it retains background detail the best, while the rest all tend to smoothen background detail out. At 30 times zoom, you wouldn't say that the Vivo and Xiaomi are using the same sensor. The Vivo's color science is so much better it's crazy, and so is its natural detail. I'd tie the Huawei with the Vivo for different reasons, but the OPPO is my vote here due to its overall appeal. Let's set colors aside when it comes to higher zooms like 60 times, and rather focus on detail only. With that in mind, the Vivo takes the win as it's the only one that doesn't oversharpen at this range to achieve detail. At their max zooms, it's hard not to fault the Vivo for being too dull, and aside from a bit of noise grain, I feel that the OPPO has the best balance in terms of color, sharpening and detail to achieve an incredible 120 times zoom shot. When it comes to video, the Vivo, OPPO and Xiaomi can all shoot at 4K 120fps using their telephotos and main cameras, but 60fps is always better to compare. Their periscopes all produce fantastic 4K 60fps video, but the Huawei is by far the most stable and offers the smoothest panning when using its periscope. It's also the least grainy, the least overblown, and the most natural while managing to pack in the most detail with the least sharpening. The Xiaomi is a close second in terms of stability and detail though. The Xiaomi is the only one that can shoot 8K video across all of its rear sensors, including its main camera. But 4K is better when trying to compare stability, and thankfully all of them can record 4K 60fps main video. Don't forget that the Vivo has a much further focal length for its main camera, so it tends to over-sharpen things a bit. The Huawei offers fantastic dynamic range here, but the OPPO has got to be my pick due to its better stability and more overall refined detail. It's also the most exposed without compromising on detail. It's odd that the Xiaomi can't shoot 4K slow motion video even though it can shoot 4K 120fps regular main video. The Vivo takes the lead in terms of 4K slow-mo, and no matter what I tried, the OPPO always came out choppy. But in terms of max slow-mo FPS, the Xiaomi can go the slowest at 1920 FPS due to frame interpolation, and it's quite a bit cleaner than the Huawei's 960 FPS, even though they're both in 1080p resolution. The Vivo maxes out at 240 FPS and the OPPO at 480 FPS, but the OPPO caps it at 720p. Thankfully, it's no longer choppy, and even though it has the lowest resolution here, it actually looks the best. The Vivo limits 8K video to its ultra-wide, but again, to keep an even playing field, I've set them all to 4K 60fps. In video, the Huawei's ultra-wide drops to 12mm, so it certainly has the highest field of view here. But I'd say it only comes ahead of the OPPO, which tends to overexpose things and even gets part of my video bracket in because its ultra-wide is placed at the bottom of its camera module. The Xiaomi's ultra-wide video is very good, but the Vivo takes the win here in terms of stability, detail, and dynamic range. The Vivo has the fastest focusing speed, and it's quite a bit quicker than the OPPO in second place, which is then closely followed by the Xiaomi, leaving the Huawei as the slowest. The Vivo is the only one that offers portrait video at a 4K resolution, and it takes the lead in terms of detail thanks to the longer focal length of its main camera. I initially favored the OPPO due to its extra exposure, but its dynamic range and detail are a bit too off for my liking. Portrait video isn't really needed though due to their large sensors, and while the Vivo doesn't have a 1-inch main camera, its 35mm focal length gives it added flexibility, producing a nice soft focus with fantastic dynamic range. If you look closer though, you'll notice that the OPPO actually packs in more detail than even the Xiaomi's 8K video. Its natural blur is just as good and its exposure is superior to all other devices here, so it gets the thumbs up from me. But then we get to periscope video of me, and my goodness does the Vivo take a huge win here. It has the perfect balance between exposure and contrast, offers impeccable dynamic range and detail, and nails tonal range. The Huawei suffers from underexposure, the OPPO is too overexposed, and the Xiaomi, well, let's just say that 8K doesn't do it any favors. And if you do what I did at night, using a light to force the telephotos to be used instead of them reverting to their mains and then removing the light to capture a low lit situation, you'll soon realize why a lot of phones switch to their main cameras instead. Telephoto videos on phones at night are not very good. But if I had to choose, it would probably be the OPPO. Their mains aren't the best at taking video of a human subject in a very dark situation either, but this struggle just proves how much better the main camera on the Huawei is at night. Not only does it brighten me up, but it handles light noise way better, adds in nice depth, and captures highlights in the background mountains. My only issue with it is its focus breathing. 4K periscope video stutters the least on the Huawei while panning, its colors are a bit too warm for my liking, but it suffers from the least noise grain, handles light noise the best, and it clearly packs in the most detail of the lot. When it comes to main 4K video at night, the OPPO is once again the most stable, and while it is the most exposed, the Huawei has the least focusing issues. The Huawei is way too warm again though, but I have to give it to it in terms of detail, especially when taking a look at the mountain in the background, dynamic range, and light noise handling. But when it comes to 4K ultra-wide video at night, it's safe to say that the Huawei's ultra-wide camera is its kryptonite. Just like with during the day, the Vivo's ultra-wide camera performs the best in terms of video. It packs in the most detail, handles light noise the best, and offers the best stability. I do tend to prefer the OPPO's color accuracy more though, and this is apparent when taking ultra-wide photos at night too. The Vivo is the most detailed and tones down colors appropriately. It handles light noise just as well as the OPPO, but the OPPO comes out ahead in terms of white balance and color accuracy. Keep in mind that I have taken all nighttime photos in their regular photo modes with auto night mode there to help if needed. Using their main cameras, I feel that the Vivo has a disadvantage due to its 35mm focal length and sensor size. It still packs in fantastic detail, but not enough light is entering the lens, which in turn affects its true potential. It also handles light noise the worst. The Huawei's pic looks dreamy, but I feel the Xiaomi takes the win here. At 2x lossless zoom using their mains, I tend to favor the OPPO due to its finer detail, white balance and light noise handling. But when jumping up to their periscopes, well, first zoom camera for the OPPO and Xiaomi, I lean more toward the Huawei for dynamic range and detail, but the Xiaomi seems to nail white balance. And when the Huawei switches its lens over for a 9.4x optical zoom at night, magic happens. Not only does it surpass the detail of the OPPO and Xiaomi's second zoom cameras, but it leaps over the Vivo's telephoto extender lens in terms of close detail. However, when looking at the background, the Vivo tends to retain more detail. I have again removed the Vivo's extender lens for the rest of the zoom shots, and the Huawei is the clear winner at 10x lossless zoom. That is until you look at the background. And it's a similar case at 30x zoom with the Huawei nailing subject detail, but throwing off the rest of the photo. But at 60x zoom, the Vivo starts to soften things to bring out detail, and I gotta say, it actually works. And it's the same situation with their max focal lengths. I took the next few photos using only their main sensors. This specific pic was taken to see how well they handle white balance at night, and I gotta give it to the OPPO. This next pic was to see how well they all capture tonal range, the sky, and the moon of course. The Huawei captured the moon the best, but the Xiaomi is my pick for tonal range and the sky. I took this pic to test out light noise handling and dynamic range. I threw this photo up as a poll on my socials, and most of you voted for option A across all of my platforms, which is the Huawei, and I couldn't agree more. It offers superior dynamic range and does a decent job at light noise handling. That said, the OPPO is the most color accurate and handles light noise inside of the light bulbs the best. And then I took this pic just for fun, by turning on all of their rear flashes, and the Huawei is definitely a step up. When in portrait mode using their mains, I immediately look at the Vivo's pic, but due to its 35mm focal length, it kinda threw me off. It's a fantastic photo, but there's a lot of smoothing going on, and the Huawei offers quite a bit more detail and much better contrast control. But this photo proves that portrait mode sucks. Taking the same pic without portrait mode brings the Xiaomi's photo to life, but it's not quite on the same level as the Huawei. The Huawei adds a bit of a weird tinge, and the OPPO's pic kinda stayed the same. The Vivo fixed all of its shortcomings and earned itself a win. My one eyebrow is still a bit smooth though. But then we flicked over to their zoom cameras, and the Vivo's tonal range is now bonkers. The Huawei lost all detail, and so did the Xiaomi, leaving the crown to the OPPO. However, no matter what I tried, the OPPO would not use its 6x periscope sensor to take a 6x photo of me. It always reverted to its 3x periscope sensor and then zoomed in to take this pic, which seriously affected its detail. The Xiaomi's 4.3x periscope is a bit better here, but due to way too much over sharpening, I have to give this one to the Vivo. I was actually quite surprised with all of their selfies at night. Of course, the Vivo has no ultra-wide option for selfies, and the Huawei has the widest field of view, but the Xiaomi snatches up an easy victory here. The Xiaomi gets another win at 1x, but I prefer the Vivo when they're all set to portrait mode. I have no idea what happened to my ears in the Huawei pic here. Hey, there they are. When enabling the flash in portrait mode, the Huawei returned my ears, but the Vivo still pulled ahead of them all. I have no clue what the Xiaomi was going for here. I'd give this win to the Huawei, but this video is to test selfie portrait video, and the Huawei lacks selfie portrait video. The Vivo's selfie portrait video is way too grainy, the OPPO's is way too soft, and the Xiaomi's is a nice middle ground, so I guess Xiaomi gets my vote this time.
I thought we'd end things the same way we started, so this is what 4K selfie video looks like on all 4 devices at night. Let me know your thoughts of their selfie video and microphone quality in the comment section down below.
So now it's time to get to the results based on my personal and professional opinion. And since our opinions may differ, be sure to let me know if you agree with my findings. The Xiaomi 15 Ultra is a fantastic ultra camera phone, but it trailed the pack most of the time due to exposure and sharpening, which landed it in last place. Its first telephoto camera is great at taking macro photos, it has slightly faster shutter speeds, and its selfie camera is the most consistent when it comes to photos and videos. But even though it has 4 impressive rear cameras, I feel like there is always something missing in each situation, and even though it uses the same periscope sensor as the Vivo, it couldn't quite match up to the same zoom quality of the Vivo. The OPPO Find X8 Ultra had a couple more wins than the Xiaomi, which helped it reach 3rd place. But just like with the Xiaomi, even though it has a quad rear camera setup, it doesn't always manage to pull ahead of the Huawei and Vivo. Its long-range zoom periscope camera impressed me during the day, but it slightly fell behind at night. Its main camera video is fantastic, and so is its microphone quality. But the best thing about it is how often it manages to nail white balance and tonal range across all of its sensors. I'd say the main reason it didn't place higher is because it constantly fell behind in terms of detail across all of its native focal lengths. I guess having more rear cameras doesn't automatically make a camera phone the best camera phone. The Huawei Pura 80 Ultra performed significantly better when compared to the OPPO and Xiaomi almost all the time, which helped it pull ahead into 2nd place. It has arguably the best main camera of them all thanks to its variable aperture and high dynamic range, which always worked seamlessly, allowing it to produce deep, detailed photos during the day or even at night. It also comes out on top in terms of periscope photos and videos, especially since its periscope can switch over to a different lens for a further optical zoom, without the need for external equipment. It came very close to being the best at taking very long zoom range photos, but the main reason it didn't come in 1st place is because its color reproduction wasn't always the best, and more importantly, its ultra-wide camera struggled when compared to the Vivo, making its camera system perfect for main and zoom stills, but without a proper ultra-wide camera, it's not quite a complete system. It doesn't have the worst ultra-wide camera here, and to be honest, if it did have a better ultra-wide sensor, it probably would have been my top pick. But out of all of these devices, the one which is sadly not available in the global market, the most complete ultra camera smartphone there is, coming in 1st place is the Vivo X200 Ultra. It might not have been better than the Huawei all the time, especially when it comes to its main and periscope sensors, but it came very close. Its periscope sensor might need an external lens to take superb long-range optical zoom photos, but even without the lens, it managed to take better, very long-range zoom photos. The main reason it placed 1st here is because it has the best ultra-wide camera in this test, making it the most complete package. And what makes it an even more complete package is that its main camera offers a more professional 35mm focal length, meaning it's the most flexible camera setup here. There's a shorter focal length between each of its sensors, so it feels like each sensor truly has a purpose. Its main camera might not be as large as the rest, but due to its further focal length, it still managed to pack in loads of detail and provide a very natural depth of field. It's just unfortunate that the best camera smartphone available isn't available to most.
I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed testing out some of the highest ranked camera smartphones in the world. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on these results in the comment section down below. As always, this is TechNick, and I'll catch you in the next one.